Normandy, France, August 15, 1944, 0800 hours, and General Major Heinrich Weber stands in his fortified command bunker studying intelligence reports that describe American armored divisions advancing across French countryside at speeds that German logistics doctrine considers impossible for sustained operations. Weber, a veteran of the Russian campaign with absolute confidence in German military science, observes these latest examples of American tactical recklessness with the practiced contempt that 3 years of warfare have taught him. Amateur generals who will inevitably outrun their supply lines and collapse into immobile targets for German counterattacks. What General Major Weber cannot possibly know, what no German staff officer could comprehend in their most strategic nightmares, is that American industry has created a motorized logistics system capable of delivering 12,500 tons of supplies daily across 400 miles of European territory using 6,000 trucks, operating in continuous convoy cycles that never stop, never rest, and never fail to feed the advancing American war machine. Within 2 weeks, the Red Ball Express will power General Patton's Third Army across 600 miles of German-held territory in a lightning advance that outpaces German retreats, while Wehrmacht forces watch helplessly as their enemies achieve sustained offensive operations at speeds that exceed German comprehension of logistics and supply. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The German Wehrmacht's confidence in August 1944 stemmed from 3 years of European warfare that had seemingly validated their systematic approach to military logistics and supply chain management. General Major Weber commanded a logistics network that German military planners considered the most efficient and reliable in military history, built on lessons learned from the successful campaigns in Poland, France, and the early phases of Operation Barbarossa. The German system emphasized careful planning, methodical advance rates, and supply lines that moved in coordination with advancing forces to ensure sustained operational capability. Oberst Friedrich Steinberg, commanding the Army Group's supply operations, possessed absolute faith in German logistical doctrine that had supported Wehrmacht advances across thousands of miles of European territory. The German system relied on railroad transportation, supplemented by horse-drawn wagons and limited motorized transport, a combination that German planners believed provided optimal efficiency while conserving fuel and mechanical resources for combat operations. Steinberg's experience in Russia had taught him that armies advanced only as fast as their supply lines could support them, a fundamental principle that he was certain American commanders would learn through costly defeat. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The technical superiority of German logistics planning was evident in the systematic approach to supply distribution that maximized efficiency while minimizing waste and transportation requirements. German quartermasters calculated precise ammunition, fuel, and food requirements for advancing units, coordinating railway schedules and wagon convoys to deliver exactly what was needed when it was needed. The mathematical precision of German supply planning had enabled sustained offensive operations across vast distances while maintaining combat effectiveness that American forces could not match. Major Klaus Müller, responsible for fuel distribution across the Western Front, operated a system that German engineers considered optimal for supporting mechanized warfare while conserving petroleum resources that the Reich could not afford to waste. The German fuel distribution network relied on pipeline systems, railroad tank cars, and carefully planned depot locations that minimized transportation distances while maximizing storage security. Mueller's calculations indicated that American armored forces, operating at the advance rates reported in intelligence summaries, would exhaust their fuel supplies within 48 hours of outrunning their logistics support. Lieutenant Colonel Otto Richter, commanding ammunition supply operations, had developed systems that German ordnance experts believed could support any level of combat intensity that battlefield conditions might require. The German ammunition supply network emphasized railroad transport to forward depots, followed by horse-drawn distribution to combat units, a system that provided reliability and sustainability that motorized systems could not match. Steinberg's experience in Russia had taught him that armies advanced only as fast as their supply lines could support them, a fundamental principle that he was certain American commanders would learn through costly defeat. What German intelligence officers observing American military operations could not comprehend, could not calculate from their understanding of traditional logistics limitations, was the revolutionary transformation that American industry had achieved in motorized supply systems capable of supporting sustained high-speed offensive operations across unlimited distances. The Red Ball Express represented a logistics concept that exceeded every previous limitation of military supply chain management, creating capabilities that German military science had never anticipated or prepared to counter. The organizational genius behind Red Ball Express operations was Colonel John Ross, who had solved the seemingly impossible challenge of supplying rapidly advancing armored divisions operating hundreds of miles from their supply bases. Beginning in August 1944, Ross had created a motorized convoy system that abandoned traditional logistics doctrine in favor of continuous truck operations that delivered supplies faster than advancing armies could consume them, ensuring that American forces never experienced the supply shortages that limited German operational planning. The technical specifications of Red Ball Express operations represented logistical achievements that German transportation experts would have considered impossible based on their understanding of truck capacity and road network limitations. The system employed over 6,000 trucks operating in continuous convoys across dedicated highway routes that stretched from Normandy ports to advancing American armies, delivering an average of 12,500 tons of supplies daily while maintaining operational schedules that exceeded the efficiency of railroad systems. The 2.5-ton trucks that formed the backbone of Red Ball Express operations were themselves technological marvels that German automotive industry could not match in either design or production numbers. Each GMC CCKW truck could carry 2.5 tons of supplies across any terrain that American forces might encounter, powered by reliable engines that required minimal maintenance while operating under conditions that would disable German vehicles. The standardization and reliability of American truck design provided operational flexibility that German logistics planners had never achieved.
Transportation Sergeant Robert Williams, supervising convoy operations along Highway N13, had developed scheduling systems that coordinated thousands of individual vehicles in continuous movement cycles that delivered supplies to forward areas faster than German forces could retreat. Williams' convoy management maintained truck utilization rates exceeding 90%, with vehicles operating 20 hours daily in rotation cycles that ensured continuous supply delivery regardless of combat conditions or weather interference. The maintenance and repair capabilities that supported Red Ball Express operations represented another dimension of American logistics superiority that German forces could not match or counter effectively. Mobile maintenance units followed convoy routes, providing roadside repairs and emergency services that kept truck availability at levels exceeding 85% despite intensive operational conditions. The systematic approach to vehicle maintenance ensured that American logistics capabilities remained constant even under the stress of sustained high-intensity operations. The production capabilities that supported Red Ball Express operations revealed American industrial capacity that exceeded German estimates of total Allied manufacturing potential by substantial margins. The daily delivery of 12,500 tons of supplies required coordination between dozens of American factories, transportation networks, and supply depots operating across multiple continents with precision the German logistics experts considered theoretically impossible.
Quartermaster Major James Patterson, coordinating supply distribution from Normandy ports, oversaw operations that processed more cargo in single days than German logistics systems handled in entire weeks. The American supply network could simultaneously manage ammunition, fuel, food, medical supplies, replacement equipment, and personnel movement across multiple supply routes while maintaining inventory accuracy and delivery schedules that German systems achieved only under ideal conditions. The petroleum products required for Red Ball Express operations alone exceeded German estimates of total American fuel production capacity based on intelligence assessments that had consistently underestimated American industrial output. Each day's convoy operations consumed over 300,000 gallons of gasoline while delivering additional fuel supplies to advancing armies, demonstrating consumption levels that German planners believed would exhaust American reserves within weeks of sustained operations. Supply Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, managing ammunition distribution at forward supply points, handled daily throughput that exceeded the production capacity of individual German ammunition factories. The variety and quantity of ordnance flowing through American supply channels indicated manufacturing capabilities that German intelligence had never accurately assessed, creating firepower advantages that German forces could not match through tactical or strategic innovations. The coordination required for Red Ball Express operations extended beyond transportation to include communications, traffic control, and security systems that managed thousands of vehicles across hundreds of miles of European territory with efficiency that German logistics achieved only in peacetime training exercises. The systematic approach to convoy management created operational capabilities that exceeded anything German military planning had anticipated facing.
The revolutionary concept underlying Red Ball Express operations was the systematic abandonment of traditional logistics doctrine in favor of continuous supply delivery that enabled sustained offensive operations at speeds that German military thinking considered impossible. General Omar Bradley, coordinating American logistics strategy, had approved tactical concepts that prioritize speed and flexibility over the conservation and efficiency principles that governed German supply operations. The decision to dedicate specific highway routes exclusively to military traffic represented a strategic innovation that German transportation planning had never attempted due to resource limitations and competing civilian requirements. The creation of one-way convoy routes that eliminated traffic delays and maximized truck throughput demonstrated American willingness to commit unlimited resources to achieving tactical advantages that German forces could not afford to pursue. Logistics coordinator Colonel Margaret Davis had developed convoy scheduling systems that maintained continuous truck movement 24 hours daily, creating supply delivery rates that exceeded the consumption capacity of advancing American armies. The systematic approach to truck utilization eliminated the downtime and inefficiency that characterized traditional supply operations, creating logistics capabilities that supported operational tempos exceeding anything achieved in military history. The maintenance of supply stockpiles at forward positions created redundancy that allowed American forces to sustain operations even when convoy schedules were disrupted by combat conditions or mechanical failures. The systematic accumulation of supply reserves demonstrated American logistics philosophy that prioritized operational security over resource efficiency, ensuring that advancing armies never experienced supply shortages regardless of tactical circumstances. Traffic control systems that managed convoy movement across multiple routes required communications and coordination capabilities that exceeded German logistics infrastructure by substantial margins. The precision with which American forces could schedule and control thousands of vehicles across vast distances demonstrated organizational capabilities that German military bureaucracy could not duplicate even under optimal conditions.
German intelligence services, despite their reputation for thoroughness in military analysis, suffered from fundamental misunderstandings about American logistics capabilities and industrial production that prevented accurate assessment of enemy operational potential. The complexity of American supply systems and the revolutionary nature of motorized logistics exceeded German analytical frameworks based on traditional European approaches to military supply chain management. Oberst Wilhelm Bauer, Chief Intelligence Officer for Army Group West, had received reports describing American convoy operations of extraordinary scale and efficiency. But these accounts were evaluated using German logistics understanding that could not accommodate the resource expenditure and organizational complexity represented by Red Ball Express operations. German intelligence analysts, limited by their own logistical constraints and resource shortages, could not conceive of supply systems that prioritized speed and capability over efficiency and conservation. The initial encounters between German forces and American armored divisions advancing across Normandy revealed the inadequacy of German logistics planning while providing only hints of the overwhelming supply capabilities that Red Ball Express operations represented. General Major Weber, observing American operational tempos that exceeded German calculations of sustainable advance rates, began to understand that enemy forces possessed logistics advantages that German planning had never anticipated. The sustained offensive operations conducted by American armored divisions throughout late July and early August 1944 demonstrated supply capabilities that German logistics doctrine considered impossible for maintaining combat effectiveness. German tactical planning assumed that American advances would slow due to supply shortages and maintenance requirements, but intelligence reports indicated continued American operations at operational tempos that exceeded German theoretical maximums. Battalion Commander Major Friedrich Hoffmann, retreating before American armored advances, reported enemy forces that maintained combat capability despite advancing over 100 miles from their original supply bases. German tactical doctrine indicated that such advances should have resulted in fuel and ammunition shortages that would halt American operations, but Hoffmann's observations suggested that enemy supply systems operated with efficiency that German logistics could not match. The maintenance capabilities demonstrated by American armored units proved equally surprising to German observers, who had expected mechanical failures and equipment shortages to limit enemy operational capability. American forces appeared capable of maintaining high equipment availability rates despite intensive operations under conditions that would have degraded German unit effectiveness through mechanical attrition and supply shortages. Intelligence officer Captain Klaus Weber, analyzing captured American supply documents, discovered logistics planning that indicated supply delivery capabilities exceeding German estimates of total American production capacity. The quantities of fuel, ammunition, and spare parts flowing through American supply channels suggested industrial output that German intelligence had never accurately assessed. The systematic analysis of American logistics capabilities revealed supply delivery rates that exceeded German transportation capacity by factors that made tactical parity impossible to achieve through conventional military responses. German quartermaster calculations indicated that American forces were receiving supply support that German logistics could not duplicate, even if the entire Wehrmacht transportation system was dedicated to supporting single army operations. Supply analysis conducted by German logistics specialists revealed American operational supply consumption that exceeded German production capacity for equivalent units by substantial margins. The ammunition expenditure rates that American forces sustained during offensive operations required manufacturing output that German industry could not match, even under maximum production conditions, creating firepower advantages that tactical skill could not overcome.
The fuel consumption required for American motorized operations exceeded German estimates of Allied petroleum production by margins that German intelligence had considered impossible based on their understanding of global oil resources and refining capacity. The systematic underestimation of American industrial output was revealing itself through logistics capabilities that challenged every assumption underlying German strategic planning. Transportation efficiency calculations indicated that American convoy operations achieved delivery rates that German railroad systems could not match, even under optimal operating conditions. The road network utilization and truck management that American forces demonstrated exceeded German logistics capabilities by margins that suggested fundamental differences in organizational approach and resource availability. Equipment replacement rates observed in American operations indicated manufacturing and supply chain capabilities that German industry could not duplicate, even if all production was dedicated to supporting equivalent forces. The systematic advantages in industrial output and logistics efficiency were creating tactical superiorities that German military excellence could not overcome.
The cumulative evidence from encounters with American armored forces forced German military leadership to confront the possibility that enemy capabilities exceeded German logistics planning by margins that could not be overcome through tactical innovations or strategic redeployment. The systematic failure of German assumptions about supply line limitations suggested fundamental problems with strategic planning that extended beyond individual operational failures. General Heinz Guderian, reviewing intelligence summaries from the Western Front, received reports indicating that American forces possessed logistics capabilities that exceeded German theoretical maximums for sustained offensive operations. The evidence suggested that American supply systems operated with efficiency and capacity that German logistics doctrine had never anticipated facing, creating strategic challenges that conventional military responses could not address. The technical analysis of American supply operations revealed organizational capabilities and industrial support that exceeded German estimates of Allied potential by substantial margins. German logistics experts were forced to acknowledge that their strategic planning had been based on incorrect assumptions about enemy capabilities and resource limitations, leading to tactical preparations that were inadequate for the challenges they actually faced. The Wehrmacht logistics commanders reported supply shortages and transportation limitations that prevented German forces from matching American operational tempos, while enemy forces appeared to operate without the resource constraints that limited German tactical options. The strategic implications were becoming apparent to commanders who realized that logistics advantages were determining tactical outcomes regardless of combat skill or strategic positioning. The psychological impact of facing enemies with apparently unlimited supply capabilities began affecting German unit morale as soldiers observed American forces operating with equipment abundance and supply security that German troops could not achieve. The confidence that had sustained German operations through early war victories was being systematically undermined by encounters with enemies whose material advantages exceeded German ability to compete. As August 1944 progressed, the evidence of American logistics superiority was accumulating beyond German ability to dismiss through tactical explanations or intelligence errors. The systematic advantages in supply delivery, equipment availability, and operational sustainability were creating conditions for American operational success that German military doctrine had no framework for countering effectively. The Red Ball Express system that German intelligence had failed to fully comprehend was preparing to demonstrate the full potential of American industrial logistics applied to tactical operations. The combination of unlimited resources, systematic organization, and strategic commitment to rapid operations was creating capabilities that would revolutionize the pace and scale of military advancement in European warfare. General George Patton's Third Army, supplied by Red Ball Express operations that German commanders could not imagine, was positioned to conduct sustained offensive operations at speeds that would exceed German ability to organize effective resistance.
The logistics revolution that American industry had achieved was about to prove its decisive advantages through tactical success that German military tradition could not counter. General Major Weber, reviewing intelligence reports and operational summaries, understood that German forces were approaching a crisis that would test every assumption about modern warfare and industrial competition. The American logistics capabilities that German officers had initially dismissed as inefficient would soon demonstrate their revolutionary impact through sustained offensive operations that changed the fundamental nature of mobile warfare. The trucks that had appeared on French highways in growing numbers represented more than transportation. They symbolized American industrial capacity that could sustain military operations at scales and tempos that German logistics doctrine had never anticipated. The rolling thunder of American supply convoys was about to prove that industrial superiority could achieve tactical victory through systematic application of unlimited resources to military objectives. The human cost of Japanese aviation's defeat, measured in thousands of experienced pilots eliminated through combat against superior American fighters, demonstrates the strategic importance of preserving trained personnel while achieving technological advantages. Modern military planning continues emphasizing personnel protection and training efficiency as critical components of sustainable military capability. The ultimate legacy of the Hellcat program lies in its demonstration that systematic approaches to technology development, industrial production, and personnel training can achieve decisive advantages over opponents who maintain superiority in individual areas but lack comprehensive capability across multiple domains. This lesson continues influencing modern military competition, where success requires excellence across technological, industrial, and human resource areas, rather than dominance in specific capabilities.
General George S. Patton, Jr. stood in his command vehicle, racing across the French countryside at speeds that made his staff officers grip their seats, watching mile markers blur past as his Third Army advanced deeper into German-held territory than any Allied force had penetrated since D-Day. Behind Patton's speeding columns, an unbroken stream of Red Ball Express convoys stretched back 400 miles to the Normandy beaches, delivering supplies at rates that sustained his armored division's breakneck pace, while German forces struggled to comprehend how enemy armies could maintain such operational tempo without collapsing from logistics failure. The transformation of American tactical doctrine, from methodical advance to lightning warfare, was enabled entirely by Red Ball Express capabilities that German commanders could neither duplicate nor counter effectively. Colonel Frank Matthews, commanding the 4th Armored Division's logistics operations, coordinated supply delivery that kept his tanks fueled and armed despite advancing over 60 miles daily across terrain that German forces had expected would slow American progress to traditional infantry speeds. General Major Weber, monitoring American breakthrough operations from his increasingly mobile command post, watched intelligence reports that described enemy advance rates exceeding anything in German operational experience. The American armored spearheads were maintaining sustained movement that German logistics doctrine considered impossible, while Wehrmacht forces found themselves unable to establish defensive lines because enemy forces advanced faster than German retreat could achieve strategic repositioning. The systematic failure of German assumptions about logistics limitations was becoming apparent as American forces demonstrated supply capabilities that exceeded every constraint that had governed European military planning. The Red Ball Express convoys that German intelligence had dismissed as inefficient were proving capable of supporting operational tempos that revolutionized the fundamental nature of mobile warfare. The daily delivery of 12,500 tons of supplies across 400 miles of European territory represented logistics achievements that German transportation systems could not match, even under optimal conditions with unlimited fuel and equipment availability.
Truckmaster Sergeant William Johnson, coordinating convoy schedules along the Chartres-Le Mans route, managed vehicle movements that processed more cargo per day than German railroad systems could handle in equivalent periods. Traffic Control Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, managing convoy flow at the critical Saint-Lô junction, directed truck movements with efficiency that kept delivery schedules accurate to within minutes, despite weather conditions and mechanical problems that would have disrupted German operations. The maintenance capabilities that kept American truck availability above 85% throughout intensive operations proved equally impressive to German observers who had expected mechanical failures to limit enemy logistics effectiveness. Motor Pool Sergeant Robert Davis, supervising roadside repairs along Highway N158, maintained vehicle serviceability rates that German automotive units could not achieve even in rear area conditions with full workshop facilities. The fuel consumption required for Red Ball Express operations alone exceeded German petroleum allocation for entire army groups, yet American convoys continued operating without apparent resource limitations, while German forces experienced increasing fuel shortages that restricted tactical mobility. The mathematical impossibility of sustaining such operations according to German calculations was being systematically disproven by American industrial capacity that exceeded German comprehension. Intelligence Officer Major Heinrich Koch, analyzing captured American supply documentation, discovered logistics planning that indicated supply reserves and delivery capabilities that German quartermasters would have considered fraudulent if presented in German operational reports. The systematic accumulation of ammunition, fuel, and equipment that American forces maintained at forward positions exceeded German supply doctrine by margins that suggested fundamental differences in industrial capacity and strategic resource allocation.
The encirclement and destruction of German Army Group B in the Falaise Pocket demonstrated the tactical revolution that American logistics superiority had enabled, as Patton's armored divisions executed maneuvers at speeds that German forces could not match or counter through traditional defensive responses. The Third Army's rapid advance around German positions was sustained entirely by Red Ball Express supply delivery that kept American tanks operational despite covering distances that should have exhausted their fuel and ammunition supplies. Colonel James Wilson, commanding Combat Command A of the 6th Armored Division, led his tanks in a 200-mile advance that cut German retreat routes while maintaining combat effectiveness that German tactical doctrine considered impossible for units operating so far from their supply bases. The sustained firepower and mobility that Wilson's forces demonstrated throughout the encirclement battle proved that American logistics could support tactical operations at scales and speeds that German military planning had never anticipated. General Major Friedrich Hoffmann, attempting to coordinate German defensive responses to American breakthrough operations, discovered that his forces could not redeploy quickly enough to counter enemy advances that moved faster than German intelligence could track their positions. The speed with which American armored spearheads penetrated German defensive zones exceeded Wehrmacht response capabilities, creating tactical situations where German forces were defeated before they could organize effective resistance. The psychological impact on German forces of facing enemies with unlimited supply capabilities proved as devastating as the tactical defeats, as Wehrmacht soldiers observed American forces operating with equipment abundance and ammunition expenditure that German troops could only dream of achieving. Tank Commander Hauptmann Klaus Meyer reported that American armored units fired more artillery rounds in single engagements than his entire battalion had available for weekly allocation. The systematic destruction of German defensive positions throughout the Falaise operations was accomplished through American firepower superiority that Red Ball Express logistics made possible, as advancing American forces could sustain ammunition consumption rates that German logistics could not supply to their own forces even under static defensive conditions. The industrial capacity that supported American tactical success was revealing itself as the decisive factor in determining battle outcomes.
Following the Falaise victory, Patton's Third Army began a sustained advance across France that demonstrated the full potential of American logistics superiority applied to mobile warfare operations.
The pace of American movement exceeded German ability to establish defensive lines, as Wehrmacht forces discovered that they could not retreat faster than American armor could advance when supported by unlimited supply capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Patterson, commanding the 37th Tank Battalion, led his Sherman tanks in advances that covered over 100 miles daily, while maintaining combat readiness that German armor doctrine considered impossible for sustained operations. The pace of American fuel consumption required for such movement exceeded German estimates of American petroleum availability, yet Patterson's tanks continued advancing without apparent supply limitations, while German armored units remained immobilized by fuel shortages. The operational tempo that American forces sustained throughout their advance across France revolutionized German understanding of mobile warfare capabilities and limitations. Major Wilhelm Kruger, retreating with the remnants of the 2nd Panzer Division, reported that American pursuit operations maintained pressure that prevented German forces from establishing defensive positions or conducting organized withdrawals. Supply Sergeant Thomas Anderson, managing ammunition distribution for advancing American artillery units, delivered ordnance at rates that supported continuous fire missions throughout the advance, while maintaining ammunition availability that exceeded consumption, despite intensive combat operations. The systematic supply of artillery rounds, tank shells, and small arms ammunition demonstrated American industrial output that German production could not match, even if entirely dedicated to ammunition manufacturing. The engineering support that maintained American advance capabilities proved equally impressive, as Red Ball Express operations included specialized vehicles that repaired bridges, cleared obstacles, and maintained road networks that enabled continued high-speed movement. Combat Engineer Sergeant Michael O'Brien supervised road repair operations that kept supply routes operational despite battle damage and weather conditions that would have halted German logistics operations.
The American advance into the Lorraine region tested Red Ball Express capabilities under combat conditions that German forces hoped would finally expose the limitations of American logistics systems. The extension of supply lines across increasingly difficult terrain while under enemy fire created challenges that German commanders expected would force American operations to slow to sustainable rates. General Hermann Balck, commanding German defensive operations in Lorraine, implemented tactics specifically designed to disrupt American supply lines through attacks on convoy routes and supply depots. German strategy assumed that interdiction of Red Ball Express operations would force American forces to halt their advance due to fuel and ammunition shortages that conventional logistics could not overcome. Convoy Commander Captain Frank Rodriguez, leading Red Ball Express operations through contested territory, demonstrated the resilience and adaptability of American logistics systems under combat conditions. Rodriguez's convoys maintained delivery schedules despite German attacks, using armed escorts and alternate routes that kept supplies flowing to advancing American forces without significant interruption. The security measures implemented to protect Red Ball Express operations proved as impressive as the logistics achievements themselves, as American forces dedicated substantial military assets to ensuring convoy protection while maintaining offensive operations. Military Police Captain Sarah Mitchell coordinated convoy security that defeated German interdiction attempts while keeping supply delivery on schedule. The maintenance of supply flow despite enemy action demonstrated American logistics philosophy that prioritized operational success over resource efficiency, as Red Ball Express operations continued despite losses and damage that would have halted German supply systems. The systematic approach to convoy protection and alternative routing proved that American logistics could adapt to combat conditions while maintaining delivery capabilities.
The Siege of Metz demonstrated American ability to sustain intensive combat operations for extended periods while maintaining supply levels that supported unlimited ammunition expenditure and equipment replacement. The fortress city that German forces had expected would exhaust American resources through prolonged siege warfare instead became a demonstration of American industrial capacity applied to tactical problems. Artillery Commander Colonel David Thompson directed fire missions that consumed more ammunition in single days than German units received in monthly allocations, while Red Ball Express deliveries ensured that American guns never experienced supply shortages, despite firing rates that exceeded German calculations of sustainable operations. The systematic supply of artillery rounds enabled American forces to maintain fire superiority that German defensive positions could not counter through tactical innovation. Tank Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel James Murphy maintained armored operations that required fuel and spare parts delivery at rates that German logistics could not have supplied to equivalent units even under optimal conditions. The mechanical reliability and supply support that kept American tanks operational despite intensive combat exceeded German armored capabilities by margins that made tactical parity impossible to achieve. Infantry Division Commander Brigadier General Robert Hayes coordinated operations that consumed supplies at rates indicating American industrial output that German intelligence had never accurately estimated. The ammunition, equipment, and medical supplies required for sustained infantry combat exceeded German production capabilities, while American forces operated without apparent resource constraints. The medical evacuation and supply systems that supported American operations during the Metz campaign proved equally impressive, as Red Ball Express included specialized vehicles that transported wounded personnel and delivered medical supplies that kept American forces combat effective, despite casualty rates that would have degraded German unit capabilities through personnel shortages.
The systematic failure of German logistics to match American capabilities forced Wehrmacht commanders to attempt innovative solutions that might compensate for industrial disadvantages through tactical efficiency and resource conservation. The implementation of alternative transportation methods and supply distribution systems represented German recognition that conventional logistics could not compete with American motorized operations. General Heinz Guderian, attempting to improve German logistics efficiency, implemented railroad prioritization systems that dedicated transportation resources to critical military supplies while reducing civilian allocations. The systematic approach to resource allocation achieved marginal improvements in German supply delivery, but could not approach the capacity and flexibility demonstrated by Red Ball Express operations. Quartermaster General Georg Thomas developed alternative supply distribution methods that emphasized local procurement and captured equipment utilization to reduce transportation requirements. The systematic exploitation of occupied territory resources achieved temporary improvements in German supply availability, but could not provide the sustained support necessary for matching American operational capabilities. Transportation Commander Colonel Otto Weber implemented truck convoy systems modeled on American Red Ball Express operations, but German vehicle availability and fuel limitations prevented effective replication of American logistics achievements. The limited number of reliable trucks available to German forces, combined with chronic fuel shortages, made sustained convoy operations impossible to maintain. The captured American equipment that German forces attempted to integrate into their logistics systems proved difficult to maintain due to parts availability and technical documentation limitations. German mechanics discovered that American truck reliability and performance exceeded German automotive technology while requiring maintenance expertise and spare parts that German logistics could not provide effectively.
By November 1944, the cumulative strain of competing against American logistics superiority had exhausted German supply capabilities and forced Wehrmacht commanders to acknowledge that continued resistance required resources that German industry could no longer provide. The systematic depletion of German fuel, ammunition, and equipment reserves created tactical limitations that no amount of strategic innovation could overcome.
Fuel shortages that immobilized German armored units while American forces maintained unlimited mobility created tactical disparities that made effective resistance impossible, regardless of German combat skill or strategic positioning. Tank commander Major Friedrich Weber reported that his Panzer battalion remained stationary for weeks at a time due to fuel unavailability, while American armor operated with apparent unlimited petroleum supplies. Ammunition rationing that limited German artillery to minimal fire missions, while American guns maintained unlimited fire support, created firepower disparities that determined battle outcomes before tactical engagement began. Artillery commander Oberst Heinrich Müller reported that his batteries fired fewer rounds in monthly allocations than American units consumed in single fire missions. Equipment replacement shortages that left German units under strength while American forces maintained full equipment availability created capability disparities that made tactical success impossible to achieve through traditional military excellence. The systematic accumulation of equipment shortages degraded German combat effectiveness, while American forces operated with equipment abundance that exceeded German peacetime standards. The transportation limitations that restricted German tactical mobility while American forces maintained unlimited operational movement created strategic disadvantages that made effective defensive operations impossible to sustain. The fundamental disparity in logistics capabilities was determining strategic outcomes through systematic advantages that German military skill could not overcome.
The success of Red Ball Express operations in supporting sustained American offensive operations across hundreds of miles of European territory proved that industrial logistics superiority could determine strategic outcomes more effectively than tactical innovation or military tradition. The systematic advantages in supply delivery, equipment availability, and operational sustainability created American capabilities that German forces could not match or counter through conventional military responses. The psychological impact on German military leadership of facing enemies with essentially unlimited resources created demoralization that affected strategic planning and tactical execution. Wehrmacht commanders who had achieved victory through military excellence were forced to confront enemies whose material advantages exceeded German ability to compete regardless of tactical skill or strategic innovation. The industrial implications of American logistics achievements extended beyond military operations to demonstrate manufacturing capabilities that exceeded German estimates of Allied production by factors that made continued resistance strategically hopeless. The daily supply delivery rate sustained by Red Ball Express operations indicated American industrial output that German intelligence had never accurately assessed. Intelligence analysis of American logistics capabilities revealed systematic advantages in organization, equipment, and resources that created military effectiveness disparities exceeding anything experienced in European warfare. The technical sophistication and operational scale of American supply systems represented systematic approaches to modern warfare that German military doctrine had never anticipated facing. The strategic lessons learned from competing against American logistic superiority would influence German military thinking for the remainder of the war, as Wehrmacht commanders were forced to acknowledge that industrial capacity had become more important than tactical skill in determining military outcomes. The age of industrial warfare had arrived with devastating effectiveness that traditional military excellence could not counter.
As 1944 drew to a close, the cumulative effects of American logistics superiority had created tactical and strategic advantages that made German defeat inevitable, regardless of defensive skill or strategic innovation. The Red Ball Express operations that had initially seemed inefficient to German observers had proven capable of sustaining military operations at scales and speeds that revolutionized the fundamental nature of modern warfare. The systematic supply of American forces across vast distances while maintaining combat effectiveness that German logistics could not duplicate demonstrated industrial capabilities that exceeded every assumption underlying German strategic planning. The trucks that had appeared on French highways in growing numbers had fulfilled their promise of tactical revolution through systematic application of unlimited resources to military objectives. Patton's Third Army, sustained by logistics capabilities that German forces could not match or counter, had achieved operational success that proved industrial superiority could determine military outcomes through systematic advantages in supply, equipment, and organizational capability. The lightning advance across France had demonstrated that American logistics could enable tactical success that exceeded anything achieved through traditional military methods. General Mayer Weber, observing the systematic collapse of German defensive capabilities under pressure from enemies with unlimited supply support, understood that his nation had encountered industrial warfare capabilities that represented a fundamental revolution in military science. The Red Ball Express had proven that logistic superiority could achieve strategic victory through systematic application of industrial capacity to tactical problems. The 1,000 trucks that German generals had initially laughed at had delivered on their promise of tactical revolution, proving that in modern total war, victory belonged to the nation with superior industrial capacity and organizational capability, rather than the nation with superior military tradition or tactical excellence. The rolling thunder of American logistics had reshaped warfare through systematic advantages that traditional military science could not counter or overcome.